Hey everybody, Jack Loves Painting here with another tutorial focused on our 54mm Dwarf Slayer, and today we're going to focus on the leather of his shoulder holsters and his pistols. We're going to be starting off with a base coat of charred brown from Vallejo Game Air, and I'm just going to be hand painting this in. It's a really nice dark, rich brown, and this is going to make up the base layer brown for our leather workup. Okay, now we're going to go to flat brown, which is a mid-tone brown from Vallejo Model Color. And we're going to be going over the entire shoulder holster harness with this, but we're going to be trying to avoid some of the darker shadowed areas. This is going to be our first highlight, getting it up to kind of a mid-tone brown, because we're going to be doing on this leather is trying to replicate the same kind of faded leather, worn-in leather that we did on his boots over on Twitch, but we're going to be doing all of this by hand instead of using the airbrush, because this is some really small bits and really tight to reach places, so I didn't feel comfortable airbrushing this, and it'll be a good way to show you guys how to do some hand blend. Alright, now we're going to paint up the pistols while we wait for that leather to dry. I'm going to use some Scale 75 Thrash Metal. It's a really shiny steel color. So we're going for kind of a nickel-plated look on these pistols, and we're just going to block those in, being really careful not to touch any of that drying paint. And normally I just do stuff one at a time, but we're trying to stay busy and get this stuff knocked out pretty quickly, so that's why I'm working on the metals of the pistol while still waiting for the brown to dry that we just put down. Now we're going to go to some Necro Gold from Scale Color. It's a really dark gold color, and wouldn't be a real Slayer if he didn't have some gold on his weapon, so we're just going to be doing the grips on his pistol with this Necro Gold base tone. Just blocking those in nice and easy, making sure not to go too thick because the kind of checkerboard pattern on the grips is really shallow, so I don't want to put that paint on too thick. And since we're waiting for that paint to dry still, we're going to do the grenades on his chain belt with some refractive green. This is a nice kind of olive drab military color from Vallejo Model Color. And we're just going to block those in, get a nice base coat on those. And now that everything's dry, we're just going to be putting a wash on everything. So I've just got some plain old Nolan oil wash from Citadel, and we're just going to put those on the grenades and on the leather shoulder holsters and on the pistols. Get all of our details popped out. Okay, now that we got all of that washed dry, we're going to start doing the leather workup. So we're going back to our flat brown, and I've got it super thin. We're going to be doing a glazing technique on all these leathers. So basically what I'm doing is getting that flat brown thinned out to the point of almost kind of like dirty water, but you can still see the pigments in there, and very thinly moving that pigment around on the model to where we want our colors to be the brightest, so kind of right on the tops of his shoulders, and just glazing that on. This is kind of a slow process. It can be pretty quick if you are practiced and know what you're doing, but starting off, take your time, go on super thin, probably thinner than what you think you need, and just make sure that that paint dries up completely before you put the next layer on, so that you don't tear up any of that wet paint as it's drying. Okay, so we got that step done, and now we're going to go up to Iroko, which is a tan color from scale 75. And again, we're going to be using our glazing, kind of a cross between glazing and wet blending, because I'm going to be layering some paint on and then getting some water into my brush and kind of moving it around and thinning it out a little bit. Just kind of creating that worn leathered look by bringing in the tan color, so when that leather ages and stretches and warps over time, it gets that kind of tan color to it rather than staying brown. That's kind of what we're doing. Alright, and the next step is we're going to put in some texture on our leather stuff, and I'm going to come back with the Iroko and kind of do some edge highlights. And when I get the edge highlights done, I like to thin out the paint a little bit thinner than what I would like for my edge highlights, and then kind of put in these little scratchy marks on the leather to give it some texture and some character, kind of bring out that worn in look that we want for the leather on this guy. And while we got this paint out, I'm just going to go ahead and do the same thing to his boots. I'm just going to do some nice clean edge highlights on some of our details, like the hard edges and these laces and these kind of creases in the boot. And again, once I get those done, I'm going to go in with the paint a little bit thinner and cut in some of those little scratchy marks around the different parts of the boot that I think would be more weathered, like the heel and the toe of the boot, things like that. And before we get out of here, I want to do one more thing, which is going to be a dry brush of flat green from Vallejo Model Color, and we're going to use our chisel tip dry brush from slowfusegaming.com and just do some light dry brushing on these grenades, get all those little details on the grenades picked out. Alright, here he is. Leather workup is pretty much finished for everything on this model. We got all our details picked out, we got those textures blocked in. We're going to be continuing work on this guy over on Twitch, so if you want to catch the next few parts of the tutorial series on this guy, make sure to head over to the Jacket Club's Twitch page, give it a follow so you know when I'm going live, and I'll catch y'all next time.